The Allen Line Company appreciates all of the dedicated carriers it takes to move loads across the U.S. Stay safe.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
An OOIDA board member had the honor of hauling the wall that heals recently. We speak with him about how, despite this being his third time doing it, it's still one of the most memorable loads he's ever taken. That story is part of this week's Mission Military Appreciation. To take part, just go to OOIDA.com and click on Become a Member. You can join or renew your membership for a discounted rate, and 10% of that will go into the Truckers for Troops Fund to send care packages to our troops and to support veterans here at home. And OOIDA will match that money dollar for dollar. Again, that's at OOIDA.com. Also on today's program, a final rule on broker financial responsibility will remain in place, something that has significant impact on truck drivers who interact with brokers. Meanwhile, FMCSA has made some changes to the pilot program designed to bring drivers under 21 years of age into interstate trucking. I'll discuss both with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. And finally, Marty Ellis is hearing from truckers about some pretty common topics: inspections, warnings, personal conveyance, and DataQ. He'll bring us up to date on what's happening and, of course, offer a little advice along the way. I'll talk with the man who drives the spirit of the American trucker. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today: the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is considering an exemption request from a high school in Washington state, but first wants to hear from the public. Connell High School in Connell, Washington has asked that students under the age of 18 enrolled in the school's commercial driver's license program be allowed to obtain a commercial learner's permit. The high school says students participating in the program would obtain the permit at the age of 17 and receive 180 hours of classroom, field, and drive time instruction before obtaining a CDL at the age of 18. The public will have 30 days to comment once a notice hits the Federal Register. Meanwhile, FMCSA has granted a 5-year exemption to a fuel hauler for the use of a flashing brake light system. The decision gives Gemini Motor Transport permission to operate commercial motor vehicles equipped with a module manufactured by IntelliStop, which pulses rear clearance, identification, and brake lamps from a lower level lighting intensity to a higher level lighting intensity 4 times in 2 seconds when the brakes are applied. The lights then return to a steady burning state while the brakes remain engaged. The exemption ends a series of back and forths that date back to October of 2022, when FMCSA initially denied Gemini's request. The agency says it's, quote, deeply interested in the development and deployment of technologies that can reduce the frequency, severity, and risk of rear-end crashes, which account for about 30% of all accidents. The bridge connecting Galveston, Texas to Pelican Island will be shut down for the foreseeable future after a barge slammed into a supporting pillar on Wednesday. Officials say a tugboat backing out of a fuel storage operator next to the bridge lost control of 2 barges it was pushing. And while one person was knocked into the water, they were quickly rescued and no other injuries were reported. But oil did spill from the barge into the channel. Cleanup is underway. So is an assessment of damage to the bridge. Until it's deemed safe, the bridge will stay closed to traffic. According to a previous estimate in 2011, about 9,100 cars and trucks cross that bridge on an average day. 2 more lawmakers have signed on in support of a bill in the House that would force federal agencies to take a step back when crafting new regulations and consider how they might affect small businesses. Representatives Carol Miller of West Virginia and David Valadeo of California are the 6th and 7th co-sponsors of the Prove It Act. The bipartisan bill was introduced by Congressman Brad Finstad of Minnesota in February. He told Landline at the time that it's designed with small business owners at front of mind, like owner-operators, who make up some 96% of the trucking industry.
So the Prove It Act is really a way to go after the regulators as they develop rules and regulations to try to implement some of the laws that we pass. That's really where the rubber hits the road, and we see a lot of negative impacts on businesses and owner-operators, farmers. And it's in the tune of, all right, what does the rule say? How do we comply with this rule? How do we meet this regulation? And what we have found that it's costing Americans billions of dollars a year.
The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association has thrown its support behind the Prove It Act, saying the bill would help keep government overreach and burdensome overregulation off of the backs of the men and women behind the wheel who keep our economy moving. In Oklahoma, trucking company's application for H-2B visa truck drivers was recently denied. The Department of Labor's Board of Alien Labor Certification Appeals upheld a decision by the Employment and Training Administration to deny Oklahoma-based Salt Fork Transport's application. Salt Fork is an ag hauler transporting cargo mostly between Oklahoma and Texas. In January, the company filed an H-2B application seeking approval to hire 3 truck drivers for a 7-month period running through October under the seasonal demand standard. But 1 month later, a certifying officer found that several required pieces of information were missing in the application, including details related to drivers' routes and schedules. When given an opportunity to provide more details, the Labor Department said Salt Fork didn't, which is why the application was denied. Tennessee officials are hitting pause on a construction project meant to improve traffic conditions at the I-24-I-75 interchange in Chattanooga. A spokesperson with the Tennessee Department of Transportation told News Channel 9 that concrete beams being used for the project did not meet the requirements they spelled out in their contract with Wright Brothers Construction Company. That company will be responsible for replacing the deficient beams and all the extra work at no additional cost to TDOT. Wright Brothers Construction told News Channel 9 they discovered the problem in January, but added the issue would not change their overall timeline on the project. A bridge that carries U.S. Highway 64 to the Outer Banks of North Carolina will shut down temporarily early next month. The North Carolina DOT says the William B. Umstead Bridge, also known as the Old Man's Harbor Bridge, will shut down for 6 months starting on June 3rd. Crews will take that time to make repairs as part of a $33 million preservation project. More than 300 concrete spans on the bridge are scheduled to be repaired, and 170 expansion joints will be replaced. Drivers traveling between Mans Harbor and Roanoke Island during the closure will be advised to take the Virginia Dare Bridge as an alternate route. A new collaboration between the Arkansas DOT and Arkansas Trucking Association will provide free in-cab safety alerts for commercial truck drivers traveling on Arkansas highways. Virtual real-time alerts accompanied by an audible chime will help drivers prepare for special traffic conditions or alternate routes. Those alerts will come through the DriveWise free service available to anyone in the trucking industry without any requirements or paid subscription services. The system is compatible with most ELDs, telematics devices, smartphones, and tablets. And finally, customs officials in Texas are touting another drug bust. U.S. Customs and Border Protection say they stopped a tractor-trailer for a secondary inspection at the World Trade Bridge on May 9th. The truck was hauling cotton candy, but it was also hauling cocaine, 37 pounds of it valued at close to $500,000. The drugs were seized, the driver detained, and the whole thing is now under investigation. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Congratulations to David Murphy of Ivor, Virginia. He's received the OOIDA Safe Driving Award for 30 years of safe, accident-free driving. That's the equivalent of a car driver going 225 years without causing a single accident. The OOIDA Safe Driving Award program is sponsored by Shell Rotella. And if you're interested in receiving the Safe Driving Award, you can find a link to more information on our website, landlinenow.com. Starting Saturday, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at the Petro in Waterloo, New York. That's located at Exit 41 off Interstate 90. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, Ashley Blackford talks with an OOIDA board member who hauled the wall that heals. And I'll discuss the new rule for broker financial responsibility with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman is your leading source for quality remanufactured engines and components. Capital Reman stands ready to serve all OOIDA members to help reduce costly engine repairs or replacement. Visit capitalreman.com today and use code OOIDA10 to save.
Get the most power performance out of your rig with Howe's Diesel Defender. It provides maximum lubricity and contains specialized IDX4 detergent to clean and prevent deposits and safely removes harmful water. Visit HowesProducts.com for more information.
Attention professional drivers, do you owe money to the IRS? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. Call for help now, 855-976-4291. That's 855-976-4291.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. May is Military Appreciation Month, and in honor of that, OOIDA is acknowledging the month with a Truckers for Troops campaign to focus on supporting U.S. troops overseas and veterans back home. During this 2-week campaign, Landline Now has been shining a light on some of our members and board members who have served and support the mission. One of those is Doug Smith, talking about the wall that heals that he recently had the honor of hauling. The 3/4 scale replica of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial that sits in Washington, D.C., is making its way through the U.S., hauled by truck drivers who donate their time to take it from spot to spot. Doug joins me now to talk about the experience. Doug, thanks for joining me. Tell me, how did this opportunity come about?
Well, we got a notice from that organization, that Traveling Vietnam Memorial, the Wall That Heals organization, and we put our name in the hat. Yeah, we'd like to do that again. That was special. And we picked a part going from Peoria, Arizona to Frisco, Texas. It was 1,200 miles plus the 700-mile deadhead to get to Phoenix, or Peoria, Arizona. And so we got down there and hooked onto it. Nobody around. It was in a secure area, and I hooked onto it, and I had 2 days to get it to Frisco, Texas. Got there in the middle of the night. And so the next morning, about 80 or 90 motorcycles were in the entourage, and we gathered, and then they go on a parade for 29 miles. We drove around the local area there, going past every school they could come up with, and the school kids would be out on the front lawn waving flags and shouting for us, and it's really a special experience to be able to bring that to that town. And then when they set up the wall and invite the town to come and visit the wall for the next 5 or 6 days before they take it down and move it to the next, and another trucker gets to take their turn at taking it on to the next location. Now, Bob Essler, a guy that was our executive secretary for so long, he passed a couple of years ago. He asked me, hey, how do you get on the list for that? And I told him how, and then he got a diagnosis for cancer and was able to do that. So I dedicated this run for him. And it's a spiritual experience to be able to do that. The first time I did it, I ran out of Kleenex. I'm getting better at it, but it's still very tender.
Is this the second time you've done it? How many times have you done it?
I've done it 3 times, and my son's done it once.
For those who aren't aware, can you explain what is the Wall That Heals and describe what it looks like?
Oh, silly me. Yeah, the Wall That Heals is a 3/4 replica of the wall in Washington, D.C. It's still tender, you know. I had a high school friend a year above me that was lost there. But it's over 58,000 names on this wall that were lost in Vietnam, and they're in the order that they were killed or went missing. And when you look at that, every name is a family. It's really touching. And that is the welcome home. When that parade comes to town, it's the welcome home for the veterans that never got a welcome home. But the treatment that they were given in the Vietnam era set up the parades and the celebration of returning troops from Desert Storm and the subsequent wars after that. So it's really a messed up generation of the Vietnam era.
What was the reaction like when you did haul this? If you made any stops at truck stops or anything, what reaction did you get from people?
Going down the freeway, get a lot of honks, waves, and thumbs ups, and blinking lights. It's a great drive across I-10. Yeah, that is 2 days of I-10 with all that kind of attention. It was fun.
Now, I know I've done a few interviews on this before, and there's usually quite a waiting list. When did you put your name in to be on the list to do it?
2017, and the first time I moved it, I think, was 2018. And I had kind of an inside track there because Steve Davenport was the board member whose seat I fill now. He passed, and that's why I made a vacancy on the board that I got elected to that. He was scheduled to drive that to his hometown in Grapevine, Texas. And so with him gone, it was a natural fit for me to take up that position. And he had been so active in that organization with his truck painted with Gold Star moms on it, a motorcycle that he had built with names of Gold Star mothers of his friends. So I just kind of followed in his footsteps there and had a successful trip with good equipment, reliable. So I was called upon again. Once it was an emergency that somebody had, broke down and couldn't make the obligation, and I deadheaded from there to the Iron Range in Minnesota and took it to Wisconsin, and bobtailed home from there. So I was called on once just because, hey, we need help. Can you be the guy? Yes, here I come. That fast. And my son, he's just, go, Dad, we got this. We'll take care of things here. Get gone. So that was the second time. And then this last month was the third time for me. But not every truck can pull it because you need a long wheelbase because it's got a special trailer with a long thing out in the front. So not everybody can hook onto it. Fleet trucks won't do it. They can't do it. Owner-op trucks with longer wheelbases, they can do it.
Why is this something, do you think, so many truckers want to be a part of and haul it?
Well, my reasons are I didn't have to go. I got a draft number, but Nixon shut the war down that year as they were calling up my age group, but I had a high lottery number, so I missed out. Not that I really wanted to go, or I guess I could have enlisted and gone, but to honor all of those who have served, and I didn't, this is the smallest thank you I can give them.
Now, you've done this, like you said, 3 times. When you go into the city or town where the wall is going to be for a couple of days, you said there's, you do the parade, go by a bunch of schools. What is that like to see all the people come out and the children who I assume then have the opportunity to learn more about the Vietnam War? What is that like?
That's fun. That's way fun. Texas really, they outshine the rest of the country as far as flag waving and patriotism, in my opinion. Even though they're a Republic of Texas first and American second, they still outshine the rest of the world as far as patriotism for this land. And that's fun to be the center point of that, with the actual Vietnam veterans in front of you on their motorcycles, actually served there. And then the rest of the world that supports them, the much younger men behind the trailer. And so it's a parade with the old guys in front on their motorcycles, followed by the traveling wall trailer, and then the motorcyclists from, veterans group, VFWs, and every other kind of motorcycle group. Kids love all that. I mean, it's like a monster truck parade wouldn't be any better received by kids than this.
Why is it important that, this still be, kids be taught about, what happened in our past and to be able to see this and see the importance of honoring our veterans? Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Well, we're losing a lot of that from, I don't know if it's from being deprogrammed in school or not being taught about this, but the sacrifices that have been made throughout centuries of this country to keep this country a free land. And when you look at that wall, and every name is the person with a family that was affected, you see the memorials in Washington, D.C., the World War II memorial, it's huge. The Korean War memorial, that is sobering also. But to see the names, there's nothing like that. Just the sheer volume of the carnage that wall represents. And that's probably the best way to bring that home to people, that these were real people that died for their duty, died doing their duty. I don't know that our country can do that anymore.
And you mentioned this earlier. You dedicated this run to Bob Essler, who passed last year. Talk to me about how much more special it made this.
Well, I know he really wanted to do it because he had read the article in Landline magazine that they did on when I did this before, and he wanted to do it badly. And then the diagnosis came through before the next wall move, the next season. And he was the first guy I met when I came back there to be evaluated as being a candidate as an alternate board member. And he's kind of like the first face I knew at OOIDA. Just a great guy to be around, always happy. And the stories, his old trucker stories, they were good stuff.
Now, you've hauled a lot of neat things over the course of your career. Where does the wall rank among those?
Oh, it's right up there. It's a spiritual experience. And in my faith, we did restored a temple in Nauvoo, Illinois, and I was selected to take sunstones, large stone carvings that go around the top of that building. I mean, that was to be entrusted with those. That was sobering as well. And my pioneer forebears that walked from Nauvoo all the way to Salt Lake City when they were expelled from Nauvoo. It was great to be able to go backwards on I-80, which used to be the Mormon Trail, US 30, to be able to take those back there. So that's on top of my list. That's highly personal.
What would you say to someone who, is considering signing up to haul this wall, but maybe they're, maybe a little hesitant? What would you say to them?
Have a long wheelbase. You need 95 inches from their kingpin to whatever you're going to hit next going forward. You need that, which is not an everyday truck. But be on top of your game. I haven't seen anybody leave any scratches on the graphics on this trailer, but it's in your care and keeping, and you've got to do your part to park in a place where people can't hit you or unlikely to hit you. But anywhere you can get hit. But so far, so good.
That was OOIDA board member Doug Smith talking about his experience hauling the wall that heals. The wall is currently in Waynesville, Missouri, and will be there until May 19th. To see a full list of locations where the wall will be, you can visit vvmf.org. That's vvmf.org, and click on the Wall That Heals under the Visit the Memorial tab. If you're a truck driver who's interested in hauling the wall, you can find information on how to do that on the website. OOIDA's 2-week campaign wraps up on Sunday, May 19th. Until then, truckers can join or renew their membership for $35, with 10% of that money going toward care packages. OOIDA matches the 10% dollar for dollar. For more information on OOIDA's Truckers for Troops campaign, you can visit OOIDA.com and click on Truckers for Troops in the menu tab. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off TruckStop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
A final rule on broker financial responsibility will remain in place, something that has significant impact on truck drivers who interact with brokers. Welcome back to Landline Now. This is Regulatory Roundup, and I'm Mark Reddig. I'm joined as always by OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Jay, thanks for joining me.
Good to be with you.
So we got this final rule, and it's one thing to say broker financial responsibility, but they actually get into some degree of detail here. Can you break down the most important points in this regulation that people need to be aware of?
And this all really goes back to 2012, actually, and some legislative provisions that were included in the big highway bill that was enacted that year, MAP 21, that did a couple things. It raised the financial security bond for brokers and freight forwarders from $10,000 up to $75,000. It also put in a lot of oversight stipulations that brokers and freight forwarders were supposed to be held to. Since that legislation was passed, these laws were on the books, but not really enforced by FMCSA. And over the last few years, FMCSA has undergone the rulemaking process to bring those laws into force. So they finally came out with a final rule in December of last year, which, did accomplish some positive things as it relates to broker and freight forwarder financial responsibility, limited the asset types that can be maintained, established procedures and requirements for the immediate suspension of broker and freight forwarder operating authority registration when that available security falls below $75,000. And that's really the main point that we have been watching for, that when this bond falls below $75,000, brokers should not be allowed to continue to accrue claims against that bond. And that's really what we've seen, is that a lot of these brokers, financial companies allow claims to build up against $75,000, and then years down the road, when it comes time to pay out the claims, they settle for pennies on the dollar, and motor carriers are out a whole lot of time and aren't paid in full for their rightful claims. So that's really the big provision that we were watching for. There's a few others clarifying when a broker or freight forwarder is in financial failure or insolvency, and establish related requirements. And then amending some FMCSA regulations to add civil penalties for surety and trust fund violations of the regulations, and again, establishing processes for the suspension of sureties and trusts in the event of noncompliance. So this final rule that came out in December last year, I think, was really a positive step forward. In our minds, we thought they could take a few more steps to really ensure that these financial responsibility requirements are being met, and that there's compliance and penalties if they're not met.
Yeah, and I do want to get to go back on that a little bit. When you talk about these civil penalties, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm trying to translate this from federalese into English, basically what they're saying is if they violate the rules on broker bonds, they're going to get fined.
That's correct. And that can be a good thing, depending on how the fines are allocated. Unfortunately, and something that we think can still be done, is having criminal penalties being levied against some of these entities that are really taking advantage of motor carriers. And unfortunately, FMCSA, they don't have the statutory authority to go that far at the moment. Something we might want to address in future legislation.
So it seems like this would have potentially a significant impact on trucker-broker relationships. Yes. How far do you think it goes in terms of solving some of the traditional problems we've seen there?
I think it helps a little bit, and it's for the first time really going to establish a process and some enforcement where some of these brokers who really have no intent of actually conducting business by the books, who are really getting into the trucking industry to take advantage of motor carriers, can get away with it. We're going to have some guardrails now in place beginning in January of 2025 to kind of crack down upon that. It also creates some more specific timelines in how these claims processes can be investigated, looked at, explored by FMCSA, that hopefully is not going to take the years that we see it sometimes play out within the legal processes, where a lot of that, unfortunately, is kind of being settled right now without these provisions on the books. We were hopeful that they could be established a more efficient process. FMCSA has kind of come out and said, we're not going to go that far. We're going to stick to what was in the final rule, which is helpful, but not as ideal as what we would like to see.
I want to take kind of an aside here. This is an issue. This particular kind of broker problem has been an issue for years and years. I mean, it goes all the way back. But right now, we're seeing a lot of fraud out there involved in broker-trucker interactions out there in load boards and elsewhere. Right. I'm curious if you think this will have any potential impact on that situation.
Potentially it could, and this final rulemaking is not specifically addressing the broker fraud issue. We are hearing some actions that FMCSA has unveiled in recent months to kind of really concentrate on that. We're kind of waiting to see what their plans are for an updated motor carrier registration, broker registration process. They're calling it kind of a modernization process, which we're going to hear about, I think, some more later this year. So this final rule on broker and freight forwarder financial responsibility is not exactly cracking down on the broker fraud issue, but I think it could outline some processes that are going to really prevent perhaps some fraudulent brokers from entering into the business, and some of these financial entities who are really kind of playing fast and loose with their bond amounts, that this is going to put them out of business with this final rule going into place next year. We are hopeful that this final rule is going to bring out some transparency in how some of these brokers and freight forwarders operate, that could notify motor carriers when the bond falls below $75,000. And according to the final rule, they're going to use this upcoming modernization system to kind of alert motor carriers on some of those alert on when the bond falls below $75,000. How that's going to work in detail, a lot's going to be dependent on how this new modernization system is going to be set up. So not specifically cracking down on broker fraud here, but some of the processes to monitor these entities, I think, could be helpful down the line.
So getting back to the topic and the purpose of this particular final rule here, at this point, do you think the matter is closed with FMCSA, or could we potentially see more action like the type that OOIDA has called for at some point in the future?
I think for the short term, we're going to be closed, and we've kind of got this compliance period going into effect early next year. We've got this modernization rule that's going to be supposedly going into effect early next year. How those are kind of coordinated and what the impacts are of those when they go into effect, I think are going to dictate any further action that might be necessary. If what FMCSA states and how they set it up next year, if that really does the job that it's intended, I think we'll be in a good place. If it's not really meeting the desired intent of this final rule, I think we'll have to take some further regulatory and perhaps legislative action to make sure that that can be corrected.
Now, while we're on the topic of brokers,
the
agency is also doing some other things to address some problems that truckers have with some of the bad actors in the broker community, and one of them involves training. And I'm curious if you can kind of explain to people what's happening there.
Right. Again, this dates back to those MAP 21 provisions back in 2012 that really established some requirements that brokers had to meet to get their registration. And one was having 3 years of experience or being able to kind of prove that you knew what you were doing when it comes to being a broker or freight forwarder. Again, those provisions have never really been implemented or enforced. However, in March, FMCSA informed the Transportation Intermediaries Association that they are granting their petition regarding those training requirements for brokers and freight forwarders. And TIA petitioned the agency to implement and enforce existing provisions relating to experience and training requirements for brokers to enter the marketplace. So I think that is a positive sign. We're kind of still, again, in a waiting period now for FMCSA to propose a rulemaking that would implement some of those requirements. And of course, still waiting on the official rulemaking action related to broker transparency and the OOIDA petition that we're hopeful will require brokers to automatically provide electronic copies of transactions records within 48 hours after a contractual service has been completed, and to prohibit brokers from including any provision that requires carriers to waive their rights to access transaction records. So still a whole lot of wait and see from FMCSA on cracking down on broker financial responsibility, broker fraud as well. And, certainly, the longer we wait, the more disappointing it is as we continue to see broker fraud escalate throughout the industry.
Okay. We've got a little bit of time left, Jay, and I wanted to get to one of the other topics that you had mentioned.
Yep.
FMCSA has also made some changes to the pilot program designed to bring drivers under 21 years of age into interstate trucking. And I'm curious, what are the chief changes that FMCSA has made here?
Right. So Congress, in the most recent Department of Transportation appropriations legislation, mandated that FMCSA remove some of the provisions that were required to participate in the under 21 pilot program, the Safe Driver Apprentice pilot program that has been established and is currently ongoing from FMCSA. And one of the revisions was to remove a requirement for inward-facing cameras. And really one that raised a lot of concerns for us was the requirement that a carrier had to establish a registered apprenticeship program that through the Department of Labor. And the Department of Labor has an apprenticeship program that really makes sure that anyone who's hiring apprentices meets certain criteria and requirements in terms of wages, education, and safety. So FMCSA put that in place to make sure that anyone who was allowing under 21 drivers to work for them in interstate commerce had some safeguards that these participants would be treated fairly and equitably for their work. Fortunately, Congress has removed that provision to participate in the under 21 program, and disappointed to see that, and going to be interesting to see if that really does create enthusiasm for the program, which really has not been present so far. I think the latest numbers say only about 40 carriers have been approved to participate. Only a couple dozen drivers have met the requirements so far. So now this was really a big push from the larger carriers to get younger drivers to address the so-called driver shortage, but based on the program so far, really hasn't come to fruition in any way.
Okay. Well, Jay, we've run out of time. It's very interesting, and I wish we could explore it more. But in the meanwhile, thank you very much for all the information.
All righty, Mark. Thank you.
I've been talking with OOIDA's Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. And folks, if you want to learn more about either of the topics that we discussed on the program today, just go to landline.media. Again, that website, landline.media. We'll be back in a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine VibraTech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with VibraTech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Every week we check in with Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. Marty is headed toward the northeast part of the country by way of Ohio, eventually heading to another truck show. But in the meanwhile, he's hearing some concerns from truckers about some pretty common things: inspections, warnings, personal conveyance, and DataQ. Marty brings us up to date on what's happening and, of course, offers a little advice.
Carolina west to Denver, up to Bangor, west to Austin, coast to coast, sea to sea, sail on, sail on.
Well, Marty, how are you doing?
I am lovely, Mark, and you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Where are you at right now?
I'm at the TA truck stop in Lodi, Ohio. I'll be here through the 16th. They have a Burger King, a Popeyes, a IHOP, and a Starbucks. 237 parking spots and 10 showers. And we're at I-71 and I-76 at Route 224, exit 209.
All right. Well, I know you've got a truck show coming up. What is your next big truck show event?
Our next truck show is May 31st through June 1st, and it's called the Hot Rig Truck Nationals at the Sussex County Fairgrounds in Augusta, New Jersey. They're going to be their first year of doing one. So we figured since we were going to be out in the neighborhood, we would stop in and check it out.
Absolutely. In the Garden State. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of stuff in New Jersey, so I thought it was a good match.
Well, fantastic there. Now, I know that lately you've made a couple of stops at speedways, which you haven't done too much of in the past. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, this was our first venture into that. Seven Fleet owns Speedway, and they do a really good job with their discounts through our fuel card. And the Truckers Advantage fuel card. And so that relationship was getting built, and we had discussed possibly having some of their stays included on our tour. And that's what we did. Our first three stays over there at Matthews, Missouri, and then Calvert City, Kentucky, and then Monroe, Ohio. And one of the things they did for our people that have our Truckers Advantage fuel card was they actually made a bigger discount for those three stops actually all the way through the end of this month. So any of our guys can take advantage of that deeper discount.
Well, fantastic. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, anything to help save some money nowadays.
Absolutely. We all want to do that. Well, let's talk about some of the issues that truckers are bringing to you. And, of course, this is Road Check Week. By the time folks are hearing it, it'll be in the past. But I'm kind of curious because you brought up inspections and warnings and personal conveyance. That's three pretty hot issues right there. How do they all fit together?
Well, I had one of our members stop in, and he was asking what to do about these inspections. Excuse me. That you get warnings at and what to do and how he can offset it. I mean, it's not like he can really fight. For that particular gentleman, he had a frayed airline, and any rubbing and that on the airlines, they are going to nail you on, basically. And actually, we just had to have one replaced for that. So I just suggested to him to get to know the people at his nearest scale around home and talk to them about giving him some inspections, and whether they're the full level 1 inspections or paperwork inspections, it really doesn't matter. As long as you can get some good inspections in there to offset the bad one. The bad thing about that whole thing is it's with talking to a lot of the motor carrier folks, it takes about 5 good ones to offset one bad one. And even though it wasn't a really terrible bad one, it would still goes on your points basically. And so you want to go ahead and try to get it offset. And that's what I would do. You know, I knew the guys at the South Dakota scale very well. And I would just pop in there and see if they weren't busy and they can do an inspection. And, you know, and most of them were very friendly and very kind and went ahead and went through it with me. And, you know, I explained what we needed to try to do was offset some of those bad ones. So if you work with them, talk to them friendly, I think you can get a lot of help.
Yeah, and I think that would be the key there is, you know, you mentioned that you knew the folks at the scale up there in South Dakota. Of course, if you know them and they're not so friendly or helpful, and you know that because you know them, maybe try a different scale.
Exactly, right. Yeah, you got to, kind of feel them out. And if they're just, you know, not wanting to talk with you at all, just, you know, try the next one. But a lot of times, you know, if you live in the area, a lot of times you kind of know those folks, and it's good to take advantage of that relationship, even though I've never felt like anybody should ever disregard something that happened, but they will be a lot gentler with you. And most of the time when I go in and ask for an inspection, I've already looked it over pretty good, and I still want them to find something. If there's something wrong, I want it fixed. But some of the time, you get a little leery about that nowadays.
Yeah. Now, of course, if you do get a bad inspection or if you get a ticket, really the only way to get that off of your record, if you're trying to go that route, is through DataQ. And I know that you've had some folks with some pretty specific questions about DataQ. What is it folks are wanting to know about that?
Yeah, one of the other ones was the guy that was on PC, and even though I thought he explained to the officer. Now, you know, I wasn't there watching the interaction, but there was a problem with how the officer was interpreting the PC rule, and I thought the driver was in the right. And really, that's the only thing they can do if all they're going to do is give you a warning, is to do the DataQ, and it's not a really good system. It's not set up to even be narrowly around, you know, helping the driver out. So I'm glad, you know, that we're putting input in to hopefully get that changed. But somehow, some way, we need to help our guys that are out there doing inspections to understand that PC, they kind of made it a gray area so there'd be more leeway. The only problem with leeway is some of the time you can hang yourself with that leeway, and you got to be really careful with it. And when you use it, you need to know in your own mind that you are willing to argue your side of it, and don't just take it for granted that they're going to okay it.
And there you go. Well, we're running a little bit short on time, Marty. Where are you going to next? What's your next couple of stops here?
Well, we will be over at the Petro in Waterloo, New York, May 18th through the 21st. That has an iron skillet, 221 parking spots, 17 showers, and it's at I-90 exit number 41. And then after that, we'll go to the TA in Greenland, New Hampshire, for May 23rd to the 25th. They do have a Country Pride restaurant. They only have 72 parking spots, so it's not a really big one, but they have 7 showers, Amazon lockers that a lot of the drivers seem to use. And then I-95, that's at exit 3 there. So those are the next couple that were coming up. After that, we will be going to the TA in Maybrook, New York, before that show in New Jersey.
Okay.
So if you're anywhere in the area, please stop in.
Well, fantastic. We'll say hi to the Northeast for us. And in the meanwhile, we are out of time. Marty, is there any final words you want to give before you ride off into the sunset?
Hey, just guys, you know, try to be kind to one another and give that guy next to you a break.
Brothers of the highway, children of the wind,
Once again, that was Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. You can find Marty's next stop on our show and every day at our website, landlinenow.com. That includes truck stops, truck shows, and other special events across the country. Again, you can find that at our website, landlinenow.com. Thank you for joining our program today. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and information. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome, and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.